Hello, everyone.
Hello, friends.
Welcome to the Reconstructing History podcast. I am Bob,
And I'm Kass.
and if you get a little bit of delay on this in the audio version, it's because we're doing it remotely still. Kass is in the Netherlands, and I am in America,
Yes.
and we figured we'd let you listen in on our phone calls that we make to keep up our relationship. Uh, we appreciate you tuning in. Um, so how's things over there in the flat place?
It's February.
Nice.
You know, it's
Damp and
it,
rainy. But daffodils, right?
yeah, they're daffodils. There are daffodils and there are tulips. Although
Ooh,
I haven't seen any tulips outside yet. They're just hothouse tulips at this point. And hyacinths. I have hyacinths.
more than we got
Um,
here.
Smelling wonderfully. Their hyacinths are in a pot in the house, but they smell wonderful. Yeah, it's that part of year. I mean, we have a maritime climate, so nothing really sticks around, but it is a constant bombardment of different storm systems. Sneezing?
No.
Okay.
I caught it in time.
It's a constant bombardment of different storm systems coming off the North Sea, so it feels like it's raining constantly. It's not raining constantly. It's just raining over and over and over again.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And I mean, oftentimes when I take flash out at night to use the facilities, as it were, the sky is clear at
Right,
night,
right.
but it'll be cloudy all day long. So
Mm.
it's a bit difficult not seeing the sun. And but it's crazy if there's like 15 minutes of sunlight, everybody is out walking or bicycling or
It's
whatever.
lovely. One of the things I love about the place.
Yeah, it's really people are really enthusiastic about getting out there and it's getting a little more social in town, like in the middle of the week, because we're in lockdown. You can only go to the store, to stores that sell food, necessities.
Right,
And so there's this line out the bakery, of people spaced 2 meters apart from each other and
right.
all wearing masks, but they're having like these shouted conversations with each other. And it's become this kind of social thing to gather in the middle of town and have these shouted conversations between these people who are spaced far apart.
Socially
Um,
distanced.
yeah, just because, it's gone on longer than we thought it was supposed to go on, and there's a vaccine shortage, and
Yeah,
numbers are like the amount of positive tests is still high, but hospitalizations are down, which is
that's
a good
good.
sign.
That is a good sign.
And spring is coming. I mean, there are signs of spring all around. The grass is so vividly green that it's shockingly bright, especially
Yeah,
because everything else is gray. Um, but yeah, it's February and it's hard. It's hard.
yeah. It's well. You've been posting pictures of the flowers and the green grass and stuff on our Facebook and Instagram
Yeah,
accounts.
I'm patronizing the local florist and getting a new bouquet of tulips because they're cheap.
Yeah,
Uh, New bouquet of tulips. Matter of fact, I buy them when they're old. I
right,
buy
right.
They still last like a
Oh yeah.
week, but I buy them when they're past their sell-by date.
Oh, you've gone
So,
native, cheap.
yeah, I know. Frugal. We are the frugal
Nah,
four.
cheap.
Um, no, because the florist shop isn't selling them like they normally would sell them,
Yeah,
because normally they're exporting a bunch of them and they're
yep,
they're not doing that this year. So,
yeah, yeah.
um,
So I've read.
they're not throwing them away
That's good.
because I'm giving them €5 for them.
Yeah,
So, and it makes me happy. It puts some color in the house, and
yeah.
yeah, so you
So
do what
I
you can.
I have a
Next week,
question for you.
next year, I am going to the Canaries in February.
But if we have to walk,
Oh God.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
It is a thing that I find fascinating, and I'm sure our listeners and viewers will also find it interesting.
Okay.
What got you into historical clothing in the first place?
It's, it's kind of a funny story. Um,
I'm going to sit
my
here,
mother
drink my coffee, and listen.
yeah, you drink your coffee and I'll tell the story. My mother worked in a garment factory. A lot of people in my family worked in garment factories, and so therefore I hated them. I
What, your
didn't hate
family
them.
members or the garment factories?
Both. No, the garment factories. No, no. Truth be told, when you have those things that when you smell them, they're comfort smells from your childhood, and people have like cookies or uh, chicken soup or something like that. I have the smell of machine oil and fabric dust, textile dust,
Really?
is my comfort smell, honestly. Warm machine oil and fabric dust, because I spent so many days in that factory, waiting for my mom to finish work or what have you, and so
Running
I
under
don't
the
just
machines, sweeping up little bits of string.
yeah, yeah, run with my little tiny child hands. Um, no, but no, I don't dislike garment factories, but my mom's threat to me when I was you get to be a teenager and parents think they have to threaten you in order for you to not screw up your life. And I mean, I was a straight A student and a good kid, and I was going to university, and I was doing anything I could to get out of that horrible little town. But my parents still felt the need to threaten me, and the threat was, "If you screw up, you get the machine right behind me in the garment factory." So the idea of working at a sewing machine was punishment, was framed as, "You don't wanna ever do this." So I didn't. But I mean, as a kid, I made clothes for my Barbie dolls, and I taught myself how to crochet, and I taught myself how to embroider, because I wanna make all these things. Um, but, it's funny having, a mother and other family members in professional garment makers, and I didn't learn anything from them. I mean, I suppose I learned a lot of things from watching my mother, because I do things like I clip things with the end of the scissors in a way that, you know, people who've learned how to sew later in life don't do that. It's like something you grow up with, that you just use
Oh,
the
just
very end of
yeah,
the
just
scissors and
gap the scissors a little tiny bit and then snip.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, then you hold them at the very end and just use them. Like, "Oh, I need a seam ripper." I don't need a seam ripper, I need my fricking scissors that I use for everything, 'cause you don't have all these different tools. You have your really good pair of scissors,
right.
and,
Well, it's
I mean,
I took a jewelry class some years ago, and the instructor said the surest way to identify a hobbyist is the number of tools.
mhm,
If they have twice as many tools as you have, and they hardly ever use most of them, that's a hobbyist.
yeah, yeah,
All right.
because a professional garment worker, seamstress, tailor, what have you, has one pair of really, really good shears,
Yeah.
and, um, and that's their thing,
Yeah.
and, measuring tape. Some pins. Um, also sticking the pins in your lapel, like,
Yeah.
I'll go around with pins in my lapel and then wonder why I'm getting poked in the face because I put my head down. It's another thing, well, when you're pinning something on someone, when you're taking the pins out of something, you just stick them in your lapel because it's convenient, or you stick them in your sleeve,
Yeah.
and then you forget they're there and you go,
Gonna wipe your
um,
nose or something.
yeah. But yeah, so okay, long story short, I was auditioning for a community theater play, and the directors of the play went out of the room to make their decision, and so the people who had auditioned were all sitting together, and we were gonna be there for some time, and so we all started telling stories, "What did you do on your summer vacation?" And one of the women said, "Oh, I just spent, a week camping, wearing historical dress with 10,000 of my closest friends. And I went, "What's this?" You know?
Mhm.
And, it was she was describing Penzic, and those who watch or listen to us and know or go to Penzic or have seen us at Penzic know what Penzic is. Penzic is this big, um, medievaloid event in Western Pennsylvania that happens every August, and it's huge. It's absolutely huge, and you wear, medieval
2 weeks
clothes.
long, 10 to 15,000 people.
Yeah. So,
Not last year and
it's
probably
really
not this year either.
yeah. It's very, very big, and she was indeed camping out with 10,000 of her closest friends while wearing medieval clothing. So, this intrigued me, and I'll tell you why this intrigued me. Um, I was a club kid when I was in college. My best friends lived in on Staten Island, and I used to go home with her, and we would take the ferry over to Manhattan and hit the clubs. We'd go to, the Palladium and the Limelight and, all of these different clubs downtown, or that's not downtown. None of them are downtown. Sorry, not downtown. We didn't go downtown. I would go and stay with her for the summer, and we would get these temp jobs downtown because the Staten Island Ferry lets you off downtown. So you would be, like, answering phones for a brokerage firm for a week, and then at night, we would go clubbing. And so I was a club kid, and in New York club kids dress. Like, you can't go into a club wearing sneakers. Um, we used to get so frustrated because we would go to the club and we were all dressed up, and the guys with us would be wearing, nice jeans,
But
but if
jeans
they had sneakers
nonetheless.
on, yeah, if they had sneakers on, they weren't allowed to go into the place. Sometimes some clubs wouldn't let you in if you had jeans on.
I'm
So you
reminded of
had to
that scene. Was that Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels or Snatch? Where the one of the thug enforced, "You're not coming into my fatting club with fatting tennis shoes on."
Yep, yep. And that was the for reals. And so that was how it was in New York, and this was a period of time, this was the early '90s where I'd been sick. I had gallbladder disease, and I'd come home because I had surgery and I was recovering from surgery. So I was living in Central Pennsylvania again, and, nobody dressed. Like, my friends and I would go out to hear bands play, and everybody's just wearing jeans and T-shirts, and it was the beginning of grunge.
So jeans and
So,
flannel
jeans and flannel, so
and
that
work
was
boots.
happening. Yeah, and I was just like, I wanted to dress up. And so here comes this I meet this person at the community theater audition. Neither one of us got the part, by the way. And I meet this person at the community theater audition, and she introduced me to this world of, you know, dressing up in funny clothes.
Shout out to Avengeglas, right?
Yeah, shout out to Abishaglas, the Celtic sneeze.
The Shire of the Celtic Sneeze.
They're the Celtic sneeze. Um, and yeah, Abishaglas was my first shire. And so I started going to events and dressing up and everything. And I am a shit, shall we say.
Well, I mean, your honesty is refreshing.
Yeah.
One might even call it candor.
Well, I mean, I asked my mom to make me stuff to wear. And when I was buying stuff to wear as a club kid, I bought what I wanted and, changed it how I wanted, but I didn't make anything from scratch. And I didn't like the places that were clothing selling this medieval clothing online, or actually online wasn't online yet. There really weren't online. There
By
were catalogs.
catalog. Yeah.
Yeah, catalogs, medieval, no, museum replicas and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Museum Replicas Limited.
Yeah, and I just didn't like the clothing that they were selling. I had a different idea. So I asked my mom, to make me some stuff, and I made her some sketches and everything. And I remember I asked her to make, I bought this velvet, and I bought this, it was burgundy velvet. And then I bought another velvet, a cut velvet that was navy blue, and it was cut with a pattern.
Right.
And I want her to make me this burgundy velvet dress like I'd sketched. And then it had these long pendulous sleeves. So the sleeves came like down to your wrist, and then they got really, really long.
Oh, okay,
Like,
like almost like tippets,
yeah, almost like tippets. It
but
was a
built
12th
in.
century thing.
Yeah,
It was a 12th century
yeah.
thing. And then, line the inside of the sleeve with the navy blue cut velvet, because that rolled back and then you could see that. And I had this idea in my head and it was beautiful. And so my mom made me this dress, and she made the sleeve, and then she sewed on the hangy bit separately, which looked like hell. I mean, the whole point of this kind of sleeve was it was supposed to show that you were wealthy and that you could afford to have, this excess of fabric that wasn't necessary. And my mom had, done it the cheap way. And I was so angry because I paid for this velvet so she could make it the way I wanted to, and she made it wrong. And she said, "Yeah, you know what? Make it yourself." And that was it. That was the last time she ever made me anything.
Oh yeah, and that because that right there, saying that to you is just because you
Yep.
will. I don't care
Yep.
what it is.
So then another thing happens. So, this was going on and I was going to these things, and I remember I went to the Pennsylvania Renaissance Fair with a friend, with some friends. And, in this organization you had to pick a time and place that you were supposed to be from. And, I'm of Irish ancestry. And at the time I was doing my family's genealogy, because there wasn't my family doesn't know much about the McGanns, because, you know, my grandfather uh, died young, and my great grandfather died when my grandfather was 3 years old. So we have this long line of um, men. The McGann men die alarmingly of coal mines, and so and then no one talks about them because you don't talk about them. So I didn't know a lot about my family, so I was doing my genealogy, so I was very big into the whole Irish thing. So I went to the Ren Fair and they had Irish characters, and I said, "Oh, what did Irish people wear?" And they said, "Oh, same thing as the English except green."
What? What?
And I thought,
What?
"This can't be right." I mean, the question she was answering was, how do you costume Irish people at
Yeah,
this fair? And that was, the way they distinguish the Irish characters from the English characters is the
sure.
Irish characters always wore green.
They also
But
always have ginger hair and wear
yeah,
little buckles on their hats and
it was ridiculous, and talk like the Lucky Charms leprechaun. And we're always the bad guys, always the bad guys.
well, I mean,
Um,
yeah. Anyway,
So anyway, then I found this book. It was called Dress in Ireland by Mairead Dunleavy. It came out in 88 or 89, I think, and this was about 94. Um, so I discovered this book, and it was written by the curator of ceramics, textiles, and glass at the National Museum of Ireland. And it was a treatise on dress in Ireland from earliest uh, iterations to the 20th century, early 20th century. And it was a brilliant book. And I found that there was this existing gown from the 16th century, from Elizabeth's time, called the Shinron Gown. And there was a picture of it in this book. Of course, it's a black and white grainy photograph. Um, and it was described in the book, but it wasn't described well enough that you could really make one with any certainty. So I wrote, well, actually, I didn't write her a letter right away. I had the head of the Irish college where I learned how to speak the Irish language, Liam, was one of these people who knows everybody. So I wrote Liam a letter and said, "Do you know anybody at the National Museum of Ireland because I want to find out about this dress and I don't know who to ask. I don't know who to ask for. And he said, oh, sure, and ask for Mairead. Mairead, she'll tell you everything. And Mairead wrote the book, right? And talk about Lucky Charms leprechaun
Yeah,
accent.
that's a terrible,
Yeah, I
terrible.
know. Liam does not sound like that.
No, because he's from the north.
He's not from the north. He's
Oh,
from Donegal.
uh,
He's from
which is in
he's
the
from
north.
Ulster. He's from Ulster, but he's a Donegal man. But yeah, he lived in Dublin in the winter, and so he knew Murray Dunleavy. So he's like, "Oh, write to Murray Dunleavy. She'll answer you." So I wrote to Murray Dunleavy. I said, "You know, Liam suggested that I write to you," and I asked her a bunch of questions, and I must have annoyed her because she wrote back and said, well, clearly you know more about this than I do. Why don't you just come on a Monday? We're closed on Mondays. Come on a Monday and we'll open the cases and you can have a look for yourself. And I think she meant for me to go fuck off.
Yeah, that sounds very much like a an Irish go take a short walk off a long pier, or a long walk
Yeah,
off a short pier. Sorry.
yeah. She knew I didn't live down the street
Yeah,
because, you know,
yeah.
it was a
Bloody
letter
Yanks.
from the United
Bleed
States.
Yanks.
Yeah. Damn Yanks. So I melted a credit card. I got on the phone and booked a flight on Aer Lingus and went.
And you
And
showed up at her door. How's you doing?
yeah, how's she doing? Um, so yeah, basically I had a letter and I showed it to the guard. You know, I showed up and I was like, here's my letter that says, come here on a Monday and we'll open the, so it was there. So they let me in. So they let me in and they were true to their word. Assistant opens the cases for me and said, you know, come tell the guard when you're done. And then left me alone with this open case. And, you know, I didn't know what I was doing, but I had a couple friends with me, and one friend was an artist and she sketched. And another friend was a mathematician and she measured. And I had a little voice recorder. And so I had, uh, you know, a running
Commentary.
monologue.
Yeah.
Yeah, a running commentary of everything I saw. And then we had the measurements and the sketches and everything. So we did this, um, we spent all day there and we got as much information as we could. And then I went home. And and to be fair, over the course of 5 years, I did this 3 times. So it wasn't just the first time, and that was all the information I had. It happened 3 times, and each time I got better at recording the information. And you know, because you get home and you think you've recorded everything, and then you go, oh, how, what was that? I didn't get that measurement or whatever. You don't have the information that you need.
Or crap, I need this little piece of information. How could I have forgotten to gather it? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And at the time, digital cameras weren't a thing yet. So, and you couldn't take pictures of the textiles with a flash.
Yeah.
And I didn't have, you know, I'm not a photographer. I didn't have anything with a lens that would take a low light photograph or anything like that. Um, I have, I think I have a picture of the case from afar. Um, but you know, it wasn't like, you know, the pictures that I have of the Carnamoil finds are, you know, right down there up against the stuff because you could take wonderful high res digital
That's what.
photographs now. But this,
Yeah, that's what we when we were there a few years
mhm,
ago. Yeah.
yeah, we have pictures of, you know, you could do a thread count.
Yeah.
Um,
And have
but
done.
yeah, and have them. But
Because didn't
yeah,
you
at the
put like
time,
the little centimetric tape, the little
yeah,
with the L?
yeah,
Yeah.
the L's,
Yeah.
all the L's. Yeah, and you know, and I mean, understand we didn't take it off the dress form,
Yeah.
you know? They just opened the case and we were able to look at it, and touch it and everything, but not take it down.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, so when I came back, I was on because I was interested in costume, and I was on, the age costume lists and a bunch of other email lists, because email lists are a big thing then, that
Oh
had
yeah,
to do with
that's
historic.
even before like Yahoo groups.
Actually, yeah, a couple of the costume lists that I was on became Yahoo groups
Right,
later.
right.
But this was even before Yahoo groups. So yeah, there was H costume was one of those old server kind of things that you had to do something weird to subscribe to it and all that.
Old Usenet group or something.
Yeah, and I think I'm probably going to get this wrong, but I think the groups were e groups, and then e groups was later subsumed by Yahoo groups.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
and
It
now I
was
think
a
it's all Google. I don't know.
possible.
Anyway,
There's still Yahoo still exists, but whatever. Um, but yeah, so there were these e groups, these email lists that people would subscribe to, and like there was one that was SCA beginners, and then there was like SCA Irish, and there were a couple different things. And whenever anyone would ask a question about Irish garments, I would answer. And because, people would speculate about things, and I would be like, okay, I saw the Shinron Gown in person, so here's my information. And so I really enjoyed giving people that information. And someone approached me to write an article for one of the periodicals, and I wrote an article about the Shinron gown, a Irish gown of the Renaissance, and published it. And some shithead approached me and said, "Well, what's your background?" And I was like, "I am standing in front of a white wall." Now, I don't know. What does this mean? What do you mean? What is your background? And she's like, "Oh, because I have a master's of fine arts in theater costume design. And that's not what the Irish wore." And I thought, so someone made a wool dress in the 16th century that was like nothing anybody in Ireland wore, threw it in a bog, pulled it out of the bog in 1840 just to fuck with you. I don't know. I don't know what she was on about. She was angry because I did not have the academic background that she did.
oh, she was angry
She was
because you dared to step in her sandbox without her permission.
I didn't even know who she was.
Yeah,
I was like, and what? But clearly I pissed people off. And I didn't mean to piss people off. I mean, there are times when I mean to piss people off, but
it is unmistakable,
it
ladies
is
and
unmistakable.
gentlemen. If Kass is just
It's
answering a question and you know she's not intending to piss anyone off, if she wants you to be angry, you will definitely know it.
Well, and there was a lot of shit that happened. Like somebody I knew on the costume list sent me a private message and was like, "You might want to tone it down." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? People are asking me questions, I'm answering them." And she was like, "Well, you shouldn't pretend like you know everything." And I'm like, "I don't pretend I know everything, but I did study this gown,
Yeah,
and I'm giving them my information, the information that took me 3 trips to Ireland, over the course of 3 years,
countless
over
hours in the National Museum.
yeah, and, I the National Museum of Ireland, when they got inquiries, questions about the Shinron gown, forwarded them to me for about 10 years,
Yeah,
because I literally knew more about it than they did, because they didn't have a real textile department. So that's, I mean, that's really how it all started. It started because somebody told me no. And, I'm contrary. You can't tell me no. Um, and I mean,
so
I re
Philly, so Philly. I mean,
I know.
it's
I know.
there's you. You might as well have been in a gritty costume, shouting "fuck around and find out."
Yeah. What are you doing? What are
Yeah.
you doing?
Hold this, John. I got a problem to solve.
Yeah. regret that, when I tell the story now, I think I sound like a jerk, but I wasn't being a jerk. I just wanted to know.
Yeah.
And I asked as politely as I could, but I wasn't going to let somebody tell me no,
Yeah.
you know?
And really,
So
you must not have irritated everyone because you still, if you ask to come back, it's not like they say no. We're gonna put, we're gonna have the Guardie out front with machine
oh, yeah,
guns to keep you
and
away.
when we went back in, what was it, 2017, when we went
Yeah.
back to look at the Carnival gown,
Hmm.
um, yeah, Margaret
Yeah.
Margaret, who
Basically
helped.
unlocked the drawers, said, "You know where the gloves are. You know no flash photography. Here are the reference numbers. Let me unlock the
Well,
cases."
that is the same Margaret who opens the case for me in 1994, you know? And, it was just, like, seeing her again, I had no idea it was going to be her, and I saw her, and there she is, she looks exactly the same, except instead of having dark brown hair, she has gray hair.
Yeah.
She is exactly the same, and,
And she's like, "Oh, there's this fabulous shop right around the corner where you can get a sweater or a pair of socks, lovely Irish wool. I know how much you love it."
yeah,
She was
yeah,
fabulous.
she's lovely, yeah. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's where it really started for me, and, um and that was funny. I mean, when we went there, I hadn't been in Ireland at all for, like, 20 years when we went back, and you went to the National Museum for the first time, and
Yeah.
they had rearranged everything, and now instead of the Shinron gown and the Kilcommon costume used to be in cases in the back of the audio-visual room where they would have these movies, because they needed to be in a place that was dark.
Hmm.
So you could literally go to the National Museum of Ireland and never see the textile exhibit, because it was hidden.
Yeah.
And now when you go there, it's all around the upper
The mezzanine.
gallery.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's the Shinron gown and
Killary costume when we were there,
the
at least.
Killary, yeah, the Killary jacket,
All the leather finds and all that along
yeah,
with
the
it.
shoes, the cloaks, all of those things, and they're all in these wonderful cases that actually say something
Yep.
now. And I remember you came around the corner and went, "Oh my god, that's it." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" You're like, "That's the Shinron gown, that's it." Because you'd never seen it because we weren't together in
Yeah.
the late 90s. And you had done, the sketches for the pattern and
And you worked so hard, so hard over so many years to study this thing. It gave me chills to look at it.
yeah, and there it was. There it was,
So,
with the wrong shirt underneath it, because they didn't call me.
sorry, Margaret. Um, Love you. Anyway,
Yeah.
so how did you go from there to patterns?
Well, it's not a far reach. I was on these costume lists, and people were asking me about the Shinron gown, Irish clothing from the 16th century, and I would tell them everything I knew, and they would say, "Oh, do you have a pattern for that?" And I said, "No." "What? Do I look like simplicity to you? No, I don't have a pattern for that." And I'd made a number of replicas, but of course I made them by draping the fabric, because I didn't know this at the time. I didn't know this at the time, but the only way I could figure out how to make it work was to put the fabric on a person and stitch it the way it was supposed to be stitched, um, by hand. And as it turns out, that's how they made it too.
What a lucky coincidence.
Yeah, well, I just couldn't figure out how to do it on a machine, and that's because it wasn't made on a machine. So the learning how to make the Shinron gown, teaching myself how to make the Shinron gown by studying the Shinron gown, taught me so much about historical clothing, um, naturally, because in order to make it, I had to teach myself these things, which is why I think, um, and I want to do a video or a podcast about this in the future. my path versus the academic path and why that's different. Um, so, you know, I'd made this garment over and over and over again, and I was giving people the information so that they could do it. And I mean, there were things that I could like the few pictures I had of it, I couldn't share because the National Museum of Ireland only allowed me to take pictures for my personal reference, and I wasn't allowed to put them on the internet, of
Right,
course.
right.
So, but I had sketches made from the pictures and things. And people kept saying, don't you have a pattern? Oh no, I'll buy a pattern from you. And I'm like, pattern? How do I pattern? What is pattern? And at the time, I was friends with this woman named Claire, who was a textile engineer working in Philly. And she was big into Victorian dress, like 1880s stuff. Like she would get dressed up in they had a house tour in her part of Philly. She lived in Germantown and they had a house tour and her house was on the house tour and she would show people around her house wearing Victorian dress when
That's
they had
cool.
house tour. Yeah. And so she was really interested and she was the girlfriend of my then husband's best friend. So he was, "Oh, you have to meet Claire. You'll have to meet Claire. You'll love each other and everything." And our friendship way outlasted both their relationship and my first marriage.
Ha,
But so Claire said to me, "Well, why don't you make a pattern?" And I went, "What is with you people and making a pattern? I don't know how to make a pattern." And she's like, "I could teach you." And this was a new thing.
ha,
So Claire basically she didn't teach me how to draft patterns, but she taught me the process. She taught me, you need a drafter and you need a grader and you need the people who are going to print the pattern. Basically, she laid out the whole process for me that then I was able to, over the course of 7 years, it took me from that point, because that was 1996. I didn't start making patterns until 2003,
right. Yeah,
because it took me 6 years or 7 years basically to learn all these things and get all my ducks in a row and all
yeah,
that. And plus I was working full time, it's not like I could work on this all the time. I was working on this in my spare time. And, yeah, so she basically taught me the process of producing a pattern from an engineer's point of view, from a garment industry professional point of view, not from a hobbyist point of view.
right, right.
And yeah, and I produced a pattern RH301,
Yeah,
you know? It wasn't the first. I was really afraid of it. I was
yeah. I
really
remember
afraid of
because you did the 100 series first.
yeah. I did all
The
the 17th century shapes were normal.
the 1630s stuff. I remember
Yep.
you did first.
Yeah, the English Civil War, the 30 Years' War and the English Civil War stuff, those shapes were normal
Yeah.
as far as pattern shapes
Well,
go.
and plus
The Shinron Gown,
we were reenacting 30 Years War in
yeah,
ECW at the time, so you had plenty of willing uh, sewing dummies.
yeah, exactly. And you were
And
the most willing, sweetie. You
oh
were the
god,
most willing.
I still like to wear
Um,
that stuff.
yeah, it's gorgeous. But yeah, yeah, it took me about a year to work up my nerve to produce the Shinron gown because I was really intimidated by it because it doesn't lend itself to modern patterning techniques because
No,
it's
it's got all
so
those
different.
weird. Well, I mean, it's like I've often heard you say that. Haven't I often heard you say that it's really difficult to make a pattern for something that was very clearly draped?
Yeah, it
Like,
is. And it's also yeah, it's clearly sewn from the outside
right,
while it's on a person.
right,
The left and the right half have never been the same.
right,
It's not that it's stretched over the course of years and they're not the same now. It was never symmetrical.
right, right.
Um,
And the
yeah,
same thing for like the Dungiven trues and stuff like that. I mean, it's all
mm,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, and the Shinron gown has those darts, the 3 darts in the bodice
right,
that if you take them out, the skirt falls on the floor and you go, What's this?" And then you realize, oh, it doesn't fall on the floor if you have a pregnant belly.
Yeah.
So, there are those kind of considerations. It doesn't lay flat. It doesn't lay flat. So making a flat pattern of it was incredibly challenging.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's how Reconstructing History was born. Reconstructing History was born because people kept saying, "No, no, no, I don't want that. I want a pattern." And I just went, "Okay, okay."
Taught yourself the
And
process or learned from Claire and then
yeah.
added on to it. And these days you don't do a whole lot of drafting, do you? Because we've been working
Um,
mainly on extant patterns we have in our collection that are out of print.
yeah, I mean, I still do some drafting here and there. It depends on what I'm working on.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, not to the extent that I did then. I mean,
Yeah.
then I was with the Shinron Gown, I was reinventing the wheel because there
Right.
was there was nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, now it's a lot different, and it's so funny. I thought I was going to sell a couple of patterns and just make enough money to be able to go to Ireland for the summer every year, and that was my ambition, was to make enough to go to Ireland for the summer every year.
And now
And
look
yeah,
at where our H is now.
yeah, it's in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
It was only this far away from being in Ireland. If Ireland had had a visa program like the Netherlands
Oh
does, I would
yeah.
be in
Well,
Ireland
I
now,
mean, think of it
and I
this
would be
way. Think of it.
freezing.
We can fly out of
It's
Eindhoven on Ryanair for what, 79 euros to Dublin?
Oh, I think it's less than that. I think the last time I looked, it was like 50, and
Oh
that
no,
was if you
50 is the one where they don't actually give you a seat. You strap hang like you're on the bus. Yeah.
no, no, 50 is the one where 50 is with paying for a checked bag.
Wow.
I mean,
That's
it's ridiculous. Well, it was. I don't know what it is now because Ryanair is in a state of disarray because all of
yeah.
their business evaporated last year. But no, it was like 90 minutes and 50, under 50 euros.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, honestly,
I mean,
but I
really,
think
if you think about it, it's like flying from Dulles to Philly. It's just not far.
no, it's not far at all. And oh, it's not that cold there today. It's about the same temperature as it is here. I thought it was snowing there today. It's been snowing there recently.
Oh, has it?
Mhm.
I haven't
But
seen.
yeah, I mean,
So it's
it's
it's a fascinating Genesis story,
is it?
and I
Is
think,
it
yeah,
fast?
especially
It's
since you're about to basically reinvent that wheel. There's a very exciting thing happening, ladies and gentlemen, with reconstructing history and more patterns, new patterns, and all thanks to some stuff that Kass is going to start diving deeply into in the coming weeks. So, right now, as of time of recording, it's early February. So, hey, maybe by the time you listen to this or see this in March, we'll have some very exciting announcements to make. You
Yeah,
never
so
know.
make sure you subscribe to our newsletter. You can subscribe to the newsletter by going onto the front page of reconstructinghistory.com and clicking in the box that says subscribe to
But we'll
newsletter.
have a link in the show notes as well. And probably
We'll
if
have
you're watching on YouTube, it's probably right up here.
we can't we don't have a link to the subscribe.
Oh, okay.
You have to go to the front page
All
of the
right, a
website
link to the front page.
yeah. Um so yeah, subscribe to the newsletter because that's where I'll be announcing things when I actually have a rollout date. And yeah, and as always, subscribe to the newsletter. All we ever do is give people coupons or tell people about new patterns. We're not going to spam you. We're not going to sell your address. Um,
No, good heavens. Wouldn't know how to
we don't
begin.
Yeah, we don't do any of that stuff. So subscribing to our newsletter just really gets you information, and it doesn't hurt.
Keeps you
Um,
informed.
yeah, and we don't even send out a newsletter every week.
Now,
So we're
once,
not going to
twice a
bombard
month
you.
max.
Yeah, like twice a month max. Um, and it's always, either with a coupon or information that's useful.
Yeah.
So please subscribe.
In the same
And
way, please, if you're watching this on YouTube, the like, subscribe, notify thing down there.
yeah,
Leave us
yeah,
comments
please
if you
leave
want.
us a comment. Tell me what you think. I'm
Yeah,
interested to know.
here's a question you can answer in the comments on YouTube, our YouTube audience. Was Cass being a pushy American broad when she just turned up at the National Museum of Ireland waving her letter?
I think
Let
I
us
could tell you
know.
the answer to
Let
that.
us know. But if you're
That's no surprise.
we're still also soliciting reviews and ratings on the various podcast feed things. So
Mhm.
if you leave us a rating or a review, we thank you very kindly, and we will select the starting as soon as we get some, hint, 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 we will select a review from anywhere we can find one on the podcast feeds and read it aloud here on the show, no matter what it says. So if you want me to tell everyone that I am a great big poopy head, then you just do that. You write that in a
Mhm.
review, but you have to leave the rating and review for me to do it. We will pick one at random once they start pouring in. We thank you for that. Anything you'd like to add to wrap up, my love?
No, I'm good, I think.
Okay. It's a very,
Like,
very, very
subscribe,
interesting
comment.
story. Very
Thank you.
interesting story about how sheer bloody mindedness could end up creating something pretty cool.
Well, I think that's the only thing that does. I think people start businesses because there's something that's missing in the
Yeah,
world,
yeah,
and they are determined that it is not going to be missing any longer.
that's fair.
So I think that's just how businesses start.
Yeah,
You it's there's a hole in the market, and there's something in you that can't stand that there's a hole in the market.
yeah.
So
That's
you do your thing.
pretty much serial entrepreneurs in a nutshell, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, then. I guess that's it for us this time. We'll be back very shortly with more Looney Tunes. Well, no, I'm sorry, that's copyrighted. More ridiculousness from me on the American side of the Atlantic and Cass over in the Netherlands. With that, then, we'll say ciao and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.